Hi, welcome to a special edition of Education Matters, who's part of the series, How New Jersey Schools Are Run, a school governance primer. With me is Kerri Wright. Kerri is a school board member in Morris County, Chester Township, and also a school board attorney. And might throw in there that she's the New Jersey School Board Member of the Year for 2021. Also with me is Peter Hughes. Peter is a superintendent in Bergen County, and he is also a former school board member in Morris County. So both of them have different perspectives, and they've been at board meetings and board decisions from two different roles. In this session, we're going to talk about how the parents and the board can build a relationship, how parents can work towards having a better partnership with their district. First of all, Peter, I'll start with you. And I know when some of our other things, Kerri always seems to be the no person, and I'm very, because she's an attorney. But a lot of times, a board member will be in the supermarket, and a parent will come up to them and complain about their child's teacher or something in the school district. And a lot of board members say, "Well, go talk to either the teacher if they haven't talked to them, or go to the principal." Why do they do that?
I think it's important that people realize that the Board of Ed is actually the court, the last court. It's almost like the Supreme Court, right? And there's a hierarchy of administrators that are there specifically to address problems in the school. And we have the immediate, ultimate control about learning environments. So when a board member sends you back to the superintendent or back to the principal or back to a teacher themselves, that has to do with the hierarchy of who can impact the decision most immediately. And it's really only after things have gone through that chain of command from the teacher to the vice principal, to the principal, to the superintendent, to the board, that they can act on something. And it's only when we fail to act in the interest of the best interest of the child. So it's important to realize that administrators are the ones that are actually supposed to do the fixing immediately. And it is our responsibility, and we take it seriously, that we want to be on the side of doing what's right by kids and doing what's right by your children. So ultimately, it may be easier to talk to your friend Susie in the grocery store, but it's not going to ultimately lead to immediate action. For that, you should contact the schools.
Yeah, so Kerri, this goes back to when we discussed in one of the previous episodes, the board's role in personnel. And the board superintendent relationship, that the superintendent's the one who makes the personnel decisions. Mm-hmm. Is that correct? And so,
and even the role of the board, which we talked about in a previous episode, I think it's important for the public to realize it's not just a board member sort of sending them off down the road to someone else. The role of the board is that last resort. It's that oversight, and the School Ethics Act, which governs board members and their interactions with the public, actually prohibits them from taking action when someone comes to them in the grocery store and saying something like, "Oh, I'll look into it. Don't worry. I'll make sure that little Susie gets whatever it is that you're looking for." Board members are not allowed to do that. So even that request puts them in an awkward position. And so that's why you'll get the response of, well, you have to follow the chain of command, which is something that we say, and start at the building level. I really like what Peter said, because he's absolutely right about that. The building level is where the parent can get things done quickest. Board members are not allowed to get involved. And so the fact that they're not allowed really slows the process down.
Yeah, and I usually tell a lot of board members will give a heads up to the administration. Look, you might be getting a complaint about Mrs. Jones, just, so that they're aware that it's coming. And it goes back to a discussion we had in a previous episode about no surprises. We talked about a board meeting, and it's not a great place to build a relationship in terms between the community and the board or the administration. Let's talk about some positive things. Peter, what are some things that you do to help build your relationship with your community? particularly your parents, because you have more direct contact with them.
Yeah, I love having parent coffees, and sometimes I have initiatives that I just want to make them aware of, and it's an opportunity for an engagement. And oftentimes I'll invite some board members because I want them to hear from locals about their perspectives. And I just think it's in our own best interest to partner with parents and to make sure we create those opportunities where the administration can hear that critical voice from the parent population. And sometimes I'll be hopeful that I get a lot of people and then 3 will show up. I hope that it's the right 3, right? Those invites are critical because they actually have a lot of impact on our ability to gauge what the community's doing or what their needs are. And our boards are also important insight. Like I asked my board, what do you think the impact will be in the parent population if we make such and such a decision? I want their input because that's also their role, they've been elected to represent the community. And I want them to be able to embrace that role and fulfill that role. By excluding their honesty and their opinions, I would be excluding them from their role, and that's not appropriate as a superintendent.
Yeah, I actually attended a meeting where a superintendent had a roundtable with all the PTA. I'm not sure what the parent group was, all the leaders in each building. And they brought a concern up, a policy that I heard of, which was not a policy. And it was able for the superintendent to stop a rumor before it got any legs. Kerri, Peter mentioned that he has a board liaison sometimes come to a parent meeting or something of that sort. We still have to worry about the Open Public Meetings Act a little bit, that we can't have a quorum of boards coming to parents and talking about the district, even if it's a PTA meeting.
That's correct. Anytime there is what we call a quorum of the board. So if you have a 9-member board, a quorum is a majority. So that's 5. Anytime you have a quorum of the board, you may violate the Open Public Meetings Act. You have to provide notice. You have to provide a comment period. There are certain things that you have to follow. So it's important. Oftentimes, so in Chester, if we're having one, which we did to roll out the new health curriculum a few weeks ago, my superintendent will ask us, who would like to attend this particular event? So I know whether it's going to be a board meeting, because if it is going to be a discussion of a topic that's related to the school and there's going to be a quorum of the board there, then maybe we'll just make it a board meeting. We'll notice it. We'll have the public comment period, but the whole board meeting will really just be about this particular topic. So there are ways to address it if more board members want to attend. Oftentimes it's best to just make sure that there aren't a quorum of the board present at that particular meeting.
Now, if you're a head of a home and school, PTA, PTO, whatever your parent group is in a community, and you're not having that relationship right now, how would you recommend that they reach out to the administration or the board and say, could one of you come to our parent meeting on the Tuesday night or whatever the night is? Peter, would that be okay with you if you're a new superintendent or a board president?
Absolutely, because again, it comes back to the trust. And I have to trust my board that they're going to look at and be evaluating kind of that relationship building, and they're members of the community as well. But it's important to have that conversation with the board member of roles and responsibilities. And there's a difference with administering the schools versus participating and hearing from the parents. So I think that idea of communication before a meeting like that and having that working relationship with the board is critical. I personally am fine with my board coming and attending a meeting just to get more insight into what my parents are thinking, because that's their role again. And I want them to see how I respond, and I want them to see how we make decisions collectively and include people around the table. Those are things that we should all celebrate and be involved in. I like the idea of board members having really a good understanding of how we're functioning as a district.
And I always, if you're a board member and you're going to a PTA meeting or any, you can't promise anything though. I always tell them and you can't say, I'll bring, I'll look into that. And I think parents need to understand that they can't really make any promises. They're really not even speaking for the board unless they were directed by the board to say, this is our policy. Is that correct, Kerri? I'm being a no person now.
Well, it's good. It's not just me. But generally speaking, you're right. The School Ethics Act, again, really limits what board members can do. So if a board wants to do that, my recommendation is have the board approve a liaison to the PTA. And that board member then is sort of blessed with the authority to go to the PTA meeting and then report back. But again, that board member needs to be careful of not making promises to the PTA that are items that need to be brought back to the board. Also, there's a provision in the School Ethics Act that requires board members in any statements they make to be truthful. So board members want to make sure that if they're going to be speaking to the PTA about a topic, they are well knowledgeable about that topic before they make a statement that may inadvertently be inaccurate and may subject them to a complaint through the School Ethics Act. So, but definitely the best way to do that is to get the permission from the board to be a liaison to that committee.
Peter, did you have a comment that you wanted to make?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what Kerri just said. And that would be the purpose of that one-to-one conversation with the board, because you want to make sure that they avoid those pitfalls. And we do have formal liaisons that get appointed. And I think that that's a great avenue of protecting yourself as a board and making sure, and it also alleviates the stress on the board member. I'm the liaison. I can only bring this back to the board. Action has to be taken by the board as a whole. And that's a really important point that always needs to be emphasized. It's not one board member that controls or governs the district. It's the entire board. They cannot make decisions unilaterally by themselves. It's got to be a majority vote, and it's usually in conjunction with the recommendations of the superintendent. Every item on a board agenda is upon the recommendation of the superintendent, except my contract, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that's important.
Yeah, and I would add that sometimes my experience with board members is sometimes being a parent or being an active in the PTA, they have a hard time balancing those two roles, and they feel pressure from the parent group that, you're a member of our association, you should be fighting for us all the time. So they find it hard to balance that because they get pressure from both ends. So that brings us to the end of this episode. I hope everyone enjoyed it. And I'd like to once again thanks Kerri Wright and Peter Hughes for joining me on this episode of building that relationship between the parents and the school district.